YouTube? Welcome back to the Allegheny Northern in N-Scale. And today I wanted to take some time to talk about the layout expansion. I know I was kind of musing about it, and I put pen to paper, actually pencil to paper, and kind of figured out what I wanted to do. And so to explain to you guys what I wanted to do and why I wanted to do it, I thought it would be best to go through one, why I'm doing it, and two, why what my requirements are for the expansion to make sure that I don't get into the same mistakes that I had on this layout. So the number one thing, there's two major items that I want to adjust on this layout. And one is guest access. So as it stands now, you come down the steps from the first floor, and the basement is 26 foot by almost 20 foot. Okay, so there's some other little side rooms and stuff like that, but the train doesn't go in there. It's not going to go in there. It's just there wouldn't be a way to really get it in and out because it's a doorway, and can't really knock out a basement wall. So in any event, the layout's going to occupy the main basement room, and in the main basement room, I obviously have my power panel, gas meter, water meter, furnace, washer, dryer, hot water tank, all that stuff that houses kind of need to make modern civilization just lovely. So I can't move those items. Well, I can. I'm not going to. That is way more work than I want to put in for a model railroad expansion. So everything's going to stay in its current location. Okay, so guest access. So right now you come down the steps, and you can get into the main layout room, but if you want to go see the back side of like the inland intermodal yard, or you want to see the staging yard or the helix, or the hidden intermodal yard, or even the workbench to see what current projects I'm working on, you have to open up a swing gate, which we can't do obviously if there are trains running, because you open the swing gate and now the trains are on the floor. So that's no bueno. And then we've got a movable section that gets the train from the main layout to that back hidden staging, goes in front of the washer and the dryer. And I have been ducking underneath it because it's high enough for me to duck under, but it's kind of a pain in the ass to do that with laundry in my hands. And so it works. I mean, I could always move the sections out if I wanted to. I guess I'm lazy, so I do more work to not do some work. I guess is how that works out. But anyway, so it's not ideal. It works, and the trains can go over. But we need to understand that even though my house is climatized and the basement is climatized, dehumidified, etc., etc., with the four seasons, the weather changes, the temperature changes, the humidity changes, and it's not instantaneous for all of the HVAC to catch up. And so you get some swelling, you get some shrinking in the materials. And I like to keep the house cold, so that precludes a lot of the moisture from being in the air, but still, we're dealing with wood here, okay? And so anytime I have an area where a gate or something joins or moves, when it moves, it needs to be realigned very carefully, because a small off in the track alignment in N-scale is the difference between your train staying on the track and not. So even if I haven't moved any of the movable sections since the last operating session, I have to go and I have to check to make sure everything's in alignment, make any kind of fine-tune adjustments, relock it, whatever. And it's always kind of hairpin as to whether or not the train is going to find some little bump somewhere that's maybe almost imperceptible. So the swing gate and the movable sections have got to go. That is requirement number one. I want guests to be able to come down the steps and go through the whole layout and never have to stop the trains or have them get in the way of any part of the layout. So that's item number one. Item number two is some of the grades on the layout, even at 2% using the Woodland Scenics risers, are just too steep for mainline traffic. And I understand that I'm modeling the Appalachian Mountains and there are grades that are equally as steep, but I want to, for the sake of our models, I want to ease that a little bit, kind of cap it maybe at 1.5%, 1%, and that will allow me to run really long trains with more realistic motive power. So that is the second major change I want to make to the layout. And the last the last change that I want to make, this is the third, this is the bonus, is I have the ability to have more train. Why would you not want more track to get more train layout? Okay, I mean, I think that was obvious to everybody. That is the awesome consequence of this whole project is I get more track and I get more industries, and that means more trains, and that means the hobby continues to grow. Now, after this, there's no more expansion. The basement walls are not getting any bigger, so this will be it. So it's got to be planned correctly. So what you've been looking at here is the layout as it stands, and this is the track plan. So it's set up on a 3/8 inch grid, and it's the layout tracking is close to scale. The what I really wanted to get to scale was the actual layout dimensions so that I knew what I was moving around. Okay, so for those of you who have been asking for a track plan, this is probably as close as you're going to get, because I started putting this into the computer and doing it on the computer, which would have looked a whole lot nicer and a whole lot more professional. It was taking way too damn long, and I need to get started with this project before the seasons change, because I need to do all my wood cutting outside. So yeah, this I didn't have time to play with the computer. So that's where we are with the layout as it stands today. Okay, now let's go into what I want to change the layout to. So in changing the layout, I had requirements for that as well. Obviously, I had to be able to get completely around the layout, and I didn't want to have any swing gates or movable sections. Okay, so we accomplished that. I wanted to increase my aisle width a little bit, because I wanted to be able to actually walk without having the fear that I was going to bump something. And a lot of the plexiglass that you see in the videos and being put up for one reason or another is put up not for guests. I only have guests at the house 2 or 3 times a year, and it's nice to keep the kid hands away from the details that are close to the layout edge. But it's also for me, because I can tell you how many times I've punched the hell out of that plastic because it's just clumsy, I guess. So it's there to protect the layout from me more than anybody else, because 365 days a year that layout is getting abused by me. So having a little bit of bigger aisleways will help with that. Okay, so let's look at the layout as it is, and understanding that we're going to get some bigger aisles, so we've accomplished that. The other thing that I wanted to do is, this represents roughly 16 years of building, modeling, and all of that. And I don't want to lose 16 years of what I'm calling progress. So all of the scenes that are on the current layout have to have a home in the new layout. Now, understanding that I may need to reconfigure the ends of the track a little bit, I may need to, rearrange some things, but I have to be able to save all of the major scenery pieces. So what I wanted to do is basically, let's simplify it. I want to take a Sawzall right down the middle of a scene. I want to take that scene, I want to move it to the next section of the layout where it belongs, and then I want to put it back together, and the only scenery details that I want to have to fix are where I cut to put everything back together. That is a lot more challenging than it sounds, because this layout's moved once already. When you go back to the very beginning of this channel and you see some of those earlier videos, you'll notice that this layout was built on a giant table, and it was on the first floor. You can tell because there's windows and right to the outside. Now, I have other needs for that room, which is why this stuff all came downstairs. So that's the other major caveat, is that I need to be able to take all of my old scenes, not lose any details, not lose any buildings, and not shorten any of those scenes. I can extend any of those scenes that I wanted to, but I didn't want to shorten any. So if it has a 6-yard track plan now, that scene has to have a 6-yard track plan or more in the new layout. So that's the next requirement. And in doing all of this, I recognize that there's certain areas that I've kind of set myself up for failure, but we're gonna work through those nitty-gritty details on how that's all gonna go together. So I haven't flushed all that out yet. Now, the next thing that that I want to do in all of this is to make sure that I ease my grades, that I have a nice flow of how things are going to be getting around the layout, that everything is visible, and that I can now run trains on a continuous loop up above on the top layer level of the layout, which will go all the way around, and the bottom. So ideally, I'm running anywhere between 3 and 4 trains continuously without them ever having to touch. So layers of layout with double main on both. That's kind of where I'm at with it. I may go to single main after the port. I haven't decided yet. So there's some discussion there. Okay. The very last thing that I want to make sure in all of this, and it's kind of the hardest part. I want to make sure that ultimately, when this whole layout is done, all of the scenes are preserved, and we have everything that's in place. I have room for, where I can work at my workbench. I have an area where I can sort of centralize the controls, adding circuit breakers to blocks, have the sections that are lift out sections, not swing, lift out. Actually, they'll pick up to get to the various utilities in the room. Need to be able to have access to all of the basement features without getting in the way of the layout. And so what I've got laid out here is pretty much that. I have access to the entire room. I have a very small workbench now, which is kind of the downside. I have figured out how to preserve all of the scenes and how to manipulate everything. There is a single helix that I'm going to add, and that makes that satisfied all of my requirements. Now, the in construction phase has one requirement, and that is that I have to be able to leave the layout operational for as long as possible. And the reason that I want this as a requirement is because when I start taking the layout sections out to move things around, there are going to be months where my layout is not functional in any capacity. I might be able to do a little bit of switching, but I will not be able to run full trains. And so I am sequencing the work so that I can start building the layout and building the sections and completing sections and framing, so that the downtime between when the layout goes offline for work and the time that it comes back is minimalized. So that is a huge requirement of this. And what I'm going to do is all of the sections that are not built now, so all of the new framing, I'm going to build all of that first. Any section that I can build and get constructed, I'm going to build now. And by doing that, not necessarily putting the track and everything on it, but just getting all the framing work in, that means I can, through the winter, work on all of these sections, getting the foam in, getting the track plan right. I'm going to be using Kato Unitrack so for those of you who don't like Kato Unitrack, you're not going to like the next section, and you're just going to have to get over it or find another channel, because I'm going to use Kato Unitrack. I'm going to mix it with the Kato Flex Track, and when possible or when necessary, I will use other track components for some of the more complicated track geometry, some of the crossovers. Kato's a little bit limited in some of their crossover options, so I may have to go to a Pico or an Atlas or something like that, but I will use those sections only when I need to do something funky. So I also considered maybe doing some hand laying in those areas, but I'm not sold on that yet. I don't know, so we're going to play with that when we get there. So you're going to see the layout as it is, with a lot of rough open framing for a really long time. Just as I go through and build all this stuff, because then it's going to be a matter of running all the wires and running all of the, getting all the track. And, I'm basically taking what I did in the last 16 years or so, and I'm adding another 16-year project to it. And I think now, being a little bit older, being a little bit wiser, having a little better plan, and having a little bit of having the time and the ability to do this, it's not going to take nearly as long because I'm not trying to get myself situated in life as well. I'm just trying to get trying to enjoy life. So I think this process is going to go a lot faster. I'm going to be able to put a lot more time in it. That's going to mean a lot less time buying locomotives and rolling stock, and a lot more time buying track and DCC components and scenery material, which is going to make great videos for you guys because you're going to get to watch this all. But it's going to be a little shift here on the priorities. Okay, so I roughed out basically where I want things to move to and how I'm going to configure them, and I just started jotting out some basic track plans. Basically, I wanted to see where those sections were going to fit that are already on the layout. So that's what you're seeing here. And I didn't draw everything out because, quite frankly, I don't really know how everything is going to lay out exactly just yet. I'm going to, once I know how the pieces that I have fit, then I'm going to take the time to put the rest of the pieces together and kind of lay out the layout how I want. So I'm not in a rush to do the scenery. You may see for a very long time just sections of track going through foam nothingness just so I can run trains. But this is going to kind of develop as we go here, and this is what it's going to turn into. And so this is what I'm planning. It is a massive endeavor. It's going to start here very soon, and I'm going to start scabbing sections of framing together and start cutting everything. And I'm going to take you guys on that tour while I do all of that, and you get to see what I'm doing and follow along. So that's what's been on my noodle. This is what I've been working on. I'm sorry for the crudeness of the sketches here, but this is sort of the fast and dirty pace. It's going to be a lot of measuring. It's going to be a lot of cutting, and we're sitting here. It's the last week of August, so we've got we're into September now. So I've got September and October. I've got 2 months to get everything cut and ready to go. I might get a little bit of time into November, depending on how the weather holds out, but the weather's been kind of weird this year, so I'm expecting it to one day be 80 degrees and the next day 3 feet of snow. It's just sort of the way it is here. So we're going to see how it goes. I have a pretty good tolerance for cold, so as long as my fingers don't freeze, I will probably be outside cutting as much lumber as I can to get everything ready, and I'm going to spend a lot of time sizing everything, marking everything, and getting it situated because I can always assemble it inside. And then I'm going to take you through how I protect the existing layout and everything else so that you guys can see this. So it's a big project. I'm really excited about how well it's going to make the layout function afterwards. I'm a little hesitant about losing some of these key scenes and just preserving everything. So I'm going to show you my best attempt at that, and I may reach out to you guys from time to time and go to the interwebs here for some assistance. So stay tuned for that. You can always watch it in the communities tab. If I put up a poll or put up a question, feel free to weigh in, put your 2 cents, and don't forget we do have a channel email address now, so you're always welcome to throw me an email there, drop your suggestions in, and start a conversation. So now you guys are inside my brain here and know what I'm thinking, and let's see what happens.